Previous class we started off with the theories of international trade. We discussed some of the classical theories, country based theories, mercantilism. We discussed about mercantilism, where the mercantilism gave more importance to trade. It is an economic thought school which gave more importance to trade, where they considered that increasing the trade surplus will increase their wealth in the form of gold and silver. More wealth means more power to them. So mercantilists felt, and another view of mercantilist was that they promoted the doctrine of nationalism or protectionism. Restrictions was there. They said that export can be increased but not imports has to be restricted, was the viewpoint of mercantilist school of trade. Today we will discuss about absolute cost advantage theory, developed by Adam Smith in 1776 in his book Wealth of Nations. This theory was evolved as a strong reaction to the mercantilist approach of international trade, because mercantilists, they believed that the trade has to be restrictive, and they had a protectionist view, said that imports has to be restricted through various tariffs, and import quotas has to be there to restrict the imports, and exports has to be given more stress, because only when exports is being stressed, more money, cash inflow will happen into the economy, thus increasing the wealth of the nation. That was the viewpoint of mercantilist. But Adam Smith was strongly against this protectionist view of trade. Smith upheld the necessity of free trade. He believed that free trade will lead for a sound and progressive expansion and result in better prosperity of a nation. He said that free trade has to be promoted. He had a flow chart kind of thing. He said that if we advocate free trade, every country, if it advocates free trade, it will lead to international division of labor. International division of each labor, each country will happen. We have already studied the concept of division of labor when we were discussing about the importance and scope of international trade. Division of labor means if a person is good in doing something, let him do the work, let him specialize in doing that, so that the productivity and production will be good enough. So international trade will also promote international division of labor. That means if a country is good in producing something, let them do that, and they can export it to another nation which is not good in producing that commodity. So according to Adam Smith, he advocated free trade, which will lead to international division of labor. Each country will start specializing in that commodity which they can produce cheaply, so that there will be maximization of output, production will increase, productivity will increase, and the surplus can be traded off to another nation where that same commodity have to be produced at a higher price. So thus they can gain from the trade. Countries should specialize in production and exchange of such commodities on which they have absolute cost advantage, which means the commodities which they can produce at lower cost of production when compared to other countries. For example, we can produce a machine in India, and that machine, cost of production of that machine will be 1 lakh. At the same time, the same machine can be produced in China, where it can be produced within the cost of production will be just 50,000. That means it is better to import that machinery from China to India, so that we can save 50,000 of our scarce capital resource. So we Indians should not be concentrating on something which we are not good at. We don't have the technology to produce that machinery. We should not allocate our scarce resources or channelize our resources to such production which will not have any increment to our GDP. So it is better to import it from the other nation where China is good in that technology. They can produce and export it to India. So Adam Smith believed that one country should specialize in production and exchange of such commodity which they can produce at lower cost of production. He called that lowest cost of production absolute cost advantage. If a country is having absolute cost advantage over another country on certain commodity, then that country should produce that particular commodity. When one country can produce commodity at lower cost, it should specialize in that commodity and export it to another country and get cash inflow from that country, which is kind of gain from international trade. So this was the gist of absolute cost advantage theory given by Adam Smith. If a country is good in something, then they should produce that and export it to the another country who is not good in that product. Let's just explain it through an example. See, alignment has a bit of problem when I downloaded it into the phone. So I hope you understand this matrix. There are two countries involved, India and US. There are two commodities involved, rice and wheat. This matrix shows that India can produce 10 kg of rice. India can produce 5 kg of wheat. US can produce 5 kg of rice and US can produce 10 kg of wheat with the available resources in their country. So this is the metrics given by two countries for two commodities when they indulge in international trade. So this matrix clearly shows that India has an upper hand in production of rice and US has an upper hand in production of wheat. That means India has absolute cost advantage over the production of rice, where India can specialize in rice production and export it to US, where US can only produce 5 kg of rice with the same level of resources. So it is better for India to specialize in rice and send it to US. Same way, US has an upper hand over wheat. That means US can concentrate on production of wheat. After meeting the self-sufficiency of US, they can export it to India and get trade surplus. So this is a basic example of what I have explained in the previous slide. A country should specialize and concentrate in production and exchange of that commodity. Here it is the case, if it is the case of rice, India should concentrate, division of labor should be done and specialization of product rice has to be done by India. India is not good in production of wheat, then they can import it from US, which is good in wheat production. There are certain assumptions regarding this model, which is assumptions regarding absolute cost theory. This model is on the basis of, or Adam Smith assumed that there are only two countries which are indulging into trade. There are only two commodities which is being exchanged through international trade. Such model was known as 2 into 2 model, where it involves two country and two commodities. He just assumed that for simplification of the theory, he assumed that to explain the theory, he just said that I am just taking the case of two commodities and two countries. He assumed that there is free trade. He said that only when there is no restriction among the nation, there is free flow of goods and services from one nation to another nation, the real essence of international trade or real gain from international trade can be obtained by nation. So he believed in free trade with no restriction or protection of economy. He believed that economy has to be opened up for the rest of the world. Next assumption of Adam Smith was he believed that there is no cost of production, only cost of production which every country will incur will that of labor. the wages we pay to the labor will only be considered as a cost of production. There is no other cost of production. Every cost, if cost of production is there and it has to be measured, it will be done on the basis of wages given to the labor. So he believed that labor cost is the only cost of production. So for him, the unit of measurement of production was labor cost. I've just used another illustration for this theory, a bit more economical way. See, there are two countries involved, A and B. Labor units, which shows how many men are involved per day to produce that commodity. There are two commodities involved, X and Y, and the last column shows the domestic exchange ratio. Domestic exchange ratio means if it is an internal trade. If trade is happening within the country, how much of goods we have to give to get another good, how much of X we have to give to get the level of Y. That is internal trade. If it is an absence of international trade or free trade is not there with outside the country and everything is happening within the country, what is the exchange ratio? How much of level of goods we will get in exchange of another commodity. See, you can see a country A, one labor is used per day to produce X and Y. Suppose that means country A can produce 16 units of X with one man per day and 8 units of Y with one man per day. So this is the matrix for A. Country B, one man or one labor is being used per day for production of 8 units of X and 16 units of Y. So this clearly shows, just like we have given the example of US and India rice and wheat, this clearly shows that A has an absolute cost advantage over production of X and B has an upper hand over production of Y. Now let's move till here we know and we have done with our previous slides. We are moving over to the domestic exchange ratio, which will show us the gain or use of international trade. If we are indulging in international trade, what sort of gain are we going to get? First, we will see an absence of international trade, or if there is only internal trade happening, exchange of goods and services happening within the country. Suppose Andhra Pradesh is producing rice and it is exchanging with Punjab, where Punjab is good in production of wheat, and Punjab is producing wheat and giving to Andhra, where Andhra is not good in producing wheat. So if the domestic exchange is happening, you can see that for 1x they can get 0.5y if it is done internally. If there is international trade, if free trade is allowed, if we are trading with country B, you can see that 1x can give us 2y. That means 1.5y can be gained if we are indulging into international trade. Same is the case of y for, because country B has an absolute advantage over production of y, that is they can produce 16 units of y. So if you can see that if they are they are exchanging y, you can see the 1y they may only get 0.5x, but if they are indulging in an international trade with country A, for 1y they can get 2x. That is the exchange ratio in country A. So if they indulge in international trade with country A, they can gain 1.5x, which is being shown in the below lines. Gain of country A, that is 2y minus 0.5y, that is 1.5y can be gained by India if they are indulging into trade with B. Same is the case of country B. Gain of country B, if they are doing it internally, they can only get 0.5x for 1y. If they are indulging into international trade, Then for 1y in country A, the exchange ratio is 2x. So 2x minus 0.5y, 5x, it comes to 1.5x is the gain of country B. So this table shows that rather than doing domestic exchange, it is better to go for international exchange. They will gain from international exchange if a country has an absolute advantage over producing certain commodity. Here A has absolute advantage over producing X and B have absolute cost advantage of producing Y. So why don't they indulge into international trade and get the gain from international trade? Even the absolute cost advantage theory can be explained through a graph. You can see that in the graph, x-axis represents the level of commodity X, quantity of X commodity. Y-axis represents the level or quantum of Y commodity. AA1, the line AA1 is the production possibility curve of country A. Production possibility in the sense how much of goods and services can be produced with the given level of factors of production. That means with the given level of resources, how much of goods can be possibly produced by one nation. So AA1 is the production possibility curve of country A. That is how much of X and how much of Y can be produced by country A is being shown through AA1 production possibility curve. And BB1 is the production possibility curve of country B, which shows how much of X and how much of Y can be produced by country B with the given level of factors of production. Okay, so BB1 is the production possibility curve of country B. Now let's start with country A and the production possibility curve AA1. Suppose the nation is using the whole resources. Country A is using all the resources and they are employing all the resources in the production of X. So you need to look into the graph. If they are producing complete X, all the resources are being devoted in production of X, then country A can produce OA1 level of X. If the country is using all their resources or factors of production in production of Y, then the country can produce OA level of Y. So which shows that OA1, you can see that OA1 is more and OA is less. That means country can produce more of X and less of Y if they are putting all their resources into use, which clearly shows that country has an absolute advantage over commodity X because they can produce more level of X, which is being shown through OA1 level of X. When they use all the resources into production of Y, which they are not good in, they can only produce OA level. You can see the slope, which is bigger, OA1 or OA. It is clearly seen that OA1 is bigger than OA. That means OA1, country A can specialize in production of X. They are good in X because if they use all their resources, they can produce more level of X rather than Y. You can see the slope of OA1 and OA, which is bigger, OA1 is bigger. That means country A has absolute advantage over production of X. They can produce X more in number and they can, after meeting the self-sufficiency of their country, they can export it to country B and get the cash inflow coming from exports, thus can gain from international trade. Now let's move over to the country B with the production possibility curve B1. If all the resources are being utilized in production of X by country B, then country B can produce OB1 level of X. You can see it in the graph. OB1 level of X can be produced by country B if country B is utilizing its all resources into production of X. Suppose country B is utilizing their resources in the production of Y. You can see that OB level of Y commodity can be produced by country B. Which is bigger, OB1 or OB? OB. So which shows that country B is good in producing Y commodity rather than X commodity. So country B can specialize in production of Y commodity. After meeting the self-sufficiency of their country, they can export it to the country A and thus gain from international trade. So this is graphical representation of absolute cost advantage theory by Adam Smith. Thus we can conclude that according to Adam Smith, if a country is good in something, they can divide the labor, they can specialize in production and exchange of that commodity, produce that commodity more, and after meeting their self-sufficiency they can send it to the other country which are not good in that commodity, so that they can gain from international trade.